Hey guys, I'm excited about Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1. And we're going to read the first few verses from about 1 to 7. So I'm going to just read it and just let it begin to bring you into focus. Paul the Apostle is writing to the church at Ephesus 2,000 years ago about the key essential that there's one God. Here's what he says. Therefore, I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called. So he's called you and me out of darkness and into this marvelous light. He's called us to show forth his excellence. He's called us to not quit, not faint, but to persevere and not to grow weary in well-doing, for in due time, the Bible says, we'll reap if we faint not. So this is the end-time church at the beginning of the end times. And here we are at the end of the end days, farther along, 2,000 years in. And this is every bit as pertinent now for us. And it deserves the right to become a focus to you and me. You and me as individuals, us as a local church body, wherever you go to church, wherever you are, whatever country you're in, whatever time zone, wherever you're at in your Christian life, he's called us to himself. He's called us to a relationship. He's called us to a citizenship in heaven, to the reality of eternity, as opposed to eternal desolation and nothingness and oblivion. He's called us to eternal life, which is totally different. Both ends of the spectrum acknowledge eternity, like time without end. But some are dismissive that, hey, there is no God and there is therefore now no heaven or hell, and there really is no need for a belief system. It's just random and chaotic. Let's just kind of float through life. And some of those notions can even slip onto a believer, where we can be like kind of just going through blasé, kind of same old. But really, the Lord is good. And he's a relational God and wants us to connect with him, to fellowship with him, meaning interaction. And in fact, I pray you have an encounter with him today, that his presence gets a hold of you, that maybe even tangibly, just in your thought life and in your heart, in even your physical systems, that God will just minister to you and lift you, and his presence will come in and bring joy to you. So I just want to walk this out. I'm kind of, help me, Lord, to really be authentic about it and really live it. And that's what Paul's telling us to pay attention to. He says, I implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called, with all humility. There's so much pride in this world. Pride comes before the fall. Pride is a scary scenario. God hates a haughty look. Smugness will get us in trouble. Humility is not, God doesn't want us in false humility where, oh, no, I'm nothing, and not, like Itzhak Perlman practices his violin. He overcomes polio and dedicates his young life to develop on that skill, on that instrument. And compliments have been paid to him. I remember one time Charlie Daniels met Itzhak Perlman. Charlie Daniels, dismissively with self-deprecation, kind of, I want to say like false humility. He said, oh, I'm just a fiddle player. Charlie Daniels was he just recently passed. He entered into the Country Music Hall of Fame, I think, in 2016. He says to Itzhak Perlman, oh, I'm just a fiddle player. Itzhak Perlman says, hey, we're all just fiddle players. So they were both, clothing themselves with humility. And I mean, Charlie was esteeming the development of Itzhak Perlman's skills with classical music, but so too, Perlman was saying to Charlie Daniels, hey man, I like your style. you know? And I just think we need to understand that we all have a place and we all have a part, and we don't have to compare ourselves with each other, but we do need to clothe ourselves with humility and just humble ourselves. I ran into a neighbor on the way here, and he just has that self-deprecating humor, you know, but it emanates from a place where he actually feels good about himself. You know, he holds his head high. He loves his wife. He's good to his 3 dogs. You know, they take care of their world they live in and their garden and their, you know, that kind of thing. And he's not just like down on himself. And that's not what humility is. It's a realistic assessment that apart from him, I could do nothing. But it's also this confidence that, you know, I'm God's child. He sent his son to die for me. And he's lifted me up out of the pit. And he's pronounced certain things over me. In Deuteronomy 28, the blessings include that we would be actually called the head and not the tail, above only and not beneath. I think about that. When you feel like you have low self-esteem, when you feel trapped in life, or worse yet, you get tempted to be high-minded. We've all been around people that have alarming levels of audacious pride. And it's scary. It's like, whoa, hey, you're not all that. You know, you may have some amazing skills. You may be in a prominent position in the hierarchy you're part of or whatever. And that's great, but at the end of the day, you still put your pants on one leg at a time kind of a thing. So, you know, just ran into a guy that flew in the space shuttle, and he just was so happy. He felt privileged he got to do it. He wasn't like, I'm so amazing. I did something you never could ever possibly do. You know, you peon. You know, it was like, oh, dude, it was awesome. You know, and let me share my experience with you. Now that's, you know, here's a guy who developed in such levels in science, way beyond me in school. That's for sure. And instead of going, yeah, you wouldn't understand, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, oh, let me tell you what I got in, how I enjoyed it. It was, you know, it was awesome, you know. And that's clothing yourself with humility and gentleness. There's so much meanness. Just watch the news. So much harshness. You know, so much aggression. Gentleness is powerful. And Archie Moore lived in my town, San Diego. He was a famous prize fighter. And he spoke at my Boy Scout troop. And he was a champion. And his whole message to us young boys was, don't resolve conflicts with physical violence. And he was urging us toward diplomacy, basically toward humility and gentleness. I'm looking at a guy who became famous through fighting, through boxing, punching, you know, point, counterpoint. And I thought in my young naivety, my immaturity, he's going to teach us how to, you know, block a punch and doing a left uppercut kind of a thing. You know, I was 8, 10 years old. I don't know. It's so immature. But he used that position to come in and say, don't be aggressive. You know, be gentlemen. Be gracious women. Be kind-hearted. You know, there are no girls at the troop, but, you know, there are girls watching this. So it's that it pertains to both genders. It pertains to all ages. And, you know, I had another friend, his name was Kevin, in high school, and he was a brown belt in a certain form of karate. And he's about 8 inches taller than me. You know, he was a little farther down the road in muscle development. He was studious. He was a great student. And he was a gentle giant. He, you know, I guess from learning self-defense and martial arts, he learned you should never use it right up front, and you only resort to it when you have to defend yourself or protect somebody else. not to go out and show off and, hurt people, but for self-preservation, for self-defense, and for helping others. And so he didn't have a chip on his shoulder. He clothed himself in humility and gentleness. He was a big, gentle giant. We had the Cardinals football team here, and then in '95 we had the Rams here. The LA Rams came here for a while, from '95 into the 2000s, and they went back to LA. And a number of the players were members of our church, and a lot of the starters. So there'd be running backs, a quarterback. There would be the tight end. There would be the guards and the tackles and the centers. I remember having, sitting next to some of these guys, and they were just so big. It was unreal. And I remember one guy was my neighbor for many years, and he's now I think is scouting for the Rams out in LA. But he just was so gentle. He grew up in the hood. He grew up having to scrap through things, and in his career, he was the guard. I mean, he was up there blocking and slamming into people. But man, he was just so kind-hearted. He was so humble, so gentle, consistently so. This big, towering, giant man's man, And I think the church, each individual Christian, all of us, Paul's trying to say, look, man, walk elegantly through your lifespan. Clothe yourselves with humility. It doesn't mean you're a pushover. It doesn't mean you're down on yourself. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm nothing. No, you have a healthy self-esteem, but you give Jesus all the credit for it. And you don't brag. Over in 1 Corinthians, it says, love doesn't brag. It isn't arrogant. It doesn't put on a show. It doesn't parade itself. It doesn't cherish inflated ideas of itself. I mean, that's all what this is trying to offset. Don't go there. Don't go there in the church. Don't go there in your household. Don't go there in your interaction with people. Take the high road and go low. Humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. Whenever you have a question, I talked to a pastor in Arkansas, actually one of his volunteers, said, when we don't know what to do, we go low. And I said, what does that mean? We find an area to serve. We just start serving. I thought, wow, that's a cool exhortation, because the greatest in the kingdom is a servant. And this verse here, eventually I'm going to get to what I want to get to. He talks about there's one body, one spirit, one hope of our calling, one God, one and Father. So I'm going to meditate on that, and we're going to ponder that. But I'm inching my way into it, and I hope this helps you. I think this is really good stuff right here, and it says that we're to show tolerance for one another in love, and I just pray we have that type of decorum and that type of valuable attitude going through life, where we become peacemakers and peacekeepers and carriers of hope. So yeah, let's just spend some more time in this in these upcoming days. And I pray blessing on you. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.